Hello, YouTubers, and welcome back to another episode of The Grandstand here on the Ohio Patriot Education Network YouTube channel. I am, as always, your host, AR, the Ohio Patriot, and for today's episode, we're going to talk about new acquaintances and other communities outside of Second Amendment and constitutional patriot uh, communities here on YouTube, which is where I feel like I sit at right now, and then, of course, political. Uh, Talk is what it is as well on that one. So it'd be like outside those wheelhouses and whatnot. So for those that don't know, I was part of a panel last night um, with another YouTuber, and there was one guy that he had on a couple of weeks ago who had mentioned something about some of his buddies possibly coming in the future or something like that, and them being part of a panel discussion or whatever. And that's what happened last night. You had him, and it was him and a couple of his friends that he had brought in, and then it was a few of us regulars that were part of that whole thing. And yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting. I learned a lot of stuff, and the one thing I will say though with some of these people, like I'm not trying to knock anybody, but like I don't know, it just feels very like I almost feel like these people are condescending in some cases because they want to sit there and be like, oh, we're not going to buy into this thing, whatever the case be, and then they'll sit there and discuss like an alternate way of doing things, but it will never fucking work and never has fucking worked throughout human history, is what it is. Specifically on that, I mean, let's sit there and kind of knock the Constitution, is what it is, and then on the flip side of things, will be like, oh, but there's these people that were back in those days that were like, basically pseudo founding fathers, is what they were trying to claim these dudes were, whatever. At least this one guy was, where it was some dude who was just like there at the time supposedly, who was like against the founding fathers and the Constitution, I guess, or whatever. And it's like, so really, it was just some bitter guy that wasn't actually part of the fucking writing of the Constitution, is what they're really saying. And I feel like that's kind of what it is, though. And it's like this whole thing about like, people being born and not, and having just, like you're not basically signing a contract or whatever it is. And it's just, it really does go down to like sovereign citizen shit a lot. And that's the one thing that the main guy was discussing the first time he came in there and stuff like that, of like traveling and like sovereign citizenry and stuff like that. And I keep forgetting what he said the things are. It's like American something or other thing, and it's like this coalition of people around the country who, I guess, there are like some lawyers within them or something like that, and it's basically there's like small groups in every state or whatever it is. And the way he was explaining it was like very small groups, basically, like I would say 25, 30 people at most would be my guess in every single state across the board. So you're talking about maybe a few hundred nationwide would be then, to maybe a couple thousand at most. And it was basically um, him saying about how they would go and do like these different things or whatever the case be, and it would be uh, like them explaining people's rights and how they can essentially travel throughout America and like maritime law and stuff like that. And that's the one thing when you start like here's my thing about all that stuff like that. When you start bringing like the maritime law shit and stuff like that, like I almost immediately tune out because it's like you're definitely talking like some sovereign citizen bullshit at that point, dude. And I've always considered those people to be bullshit in general because it's one of those situations where it's you want to sit there and essentially it basically comes down to this. It boils down to this, right? These people are the kind of people that want to have their cake and eat it too, or eat their cake and have it too. I think that's how it was actually technically said. Because I know there was one serial killer back in the day who actually said it the correct way is what it was, and that's how they ended up catching that dude back in like the 70s or 80s or whatever it was then. Because or no, actually, I can't think of it. It was the Unabomber. Actually, I'm thinking about it. I can't remember. It was one of those things like either right in my early childhood, or it was like right before I was born, or like in my very early years on this earth, basically in the 90s. And it was one of those three things. I can't remember which one, but yeah, it was that dude using like the correct phrasing or whatever, and then people were like, "Yeah, that dude has used this the entire time that I've known him and stuff like that," and that's how they caught the guy. So, but yeah, it was interesting. But yeah, my whole thing is it's like you have these individuals that will sit there and you know say that this needs to be a thing, or whatever the case be, or it's like some kind of like anarchy kind of society or whatever the case be. And yet, when you look into human history throughout the centuries and stuff like that for that kind of society, those are the ones that always fell prey to other societies that were a lot more armed and powerful and stuff like that. And the one thing I thought was interesting with all these dudes that were part of this panel last night, and it seemed like all three of them, in some ways, kind of subscribe to that kind of mentality to some extent. One less than the others, it seemed like, and he was more his thing. He was more of a dude who's just trying to help people the first time around. And sorry, my signal was going out there. I don't know why it does that. It fucking pisses me off, dude. I think it's got to be the router and the way that my laptop is, and it's so old and stuff like that. It's just having issues now. That's the one thing I noticed last night too when I was part of that panel. Like I had to leave a couple times because it's when you look at the StreamYard here and you have like the timer going and stuff like that. There were times last night where I was sitting in that panel like trying to discuss stuff or whatever, was about to like talk, say something or whatever, and then I noticed that the fucking timer just like had stopped at like an hour and a half in, or it was like 27 minutes in, or something like that, or whatever the time what was at the time. And then it was something where like I couldn't tell, I couldn't even see certain things that were being shown on camera and stuff like that by the host of the show and stuff like that. So yeah, and I've noticed that for a long time now. When it comes to any time, it seems like anytime I'm part of a panel that's more than like 7 people, I think is what it is, and then we're doing other things as well, it starts to fuck up on my end. So I don't know if it's something where it's just like the way that StreamYard works is it's trying to yank like as much computing power from every place to be able to function throughout the entirety of the thing, or whatever the case be. And it's because, with my stuff, it's so outdated and everything else like that. And unfortunately, I can't fix that because I don't have the money, is what it is right now, and probably never will actually. But yeah, the thing is like, it's a situation of when you're on the back end of things and you have like the lowest computing power or whatever it is there of everybody, and then you just can't have like things work right or whatever it is. It sucks, dude, and that's why I had to jump. And if you'll notice last night, if you were part of that stream, all of a sudden you see me jump in the comment section and say stuff like that, where it's like, yeah, I had to dip because the internet issues and stuff like that. So, and then even when I went back in a couple times, like it was still doing that, and it wasn't until people had started leaving that it started fixing itself basically at that point. Then, so like I said, I really think it's something like that where it's like if you have like 7, 8, 9, 10 people, whatever it is on there, that's where it starts to fuck up. And it's not real. Like the thing is, like as soon as every tab was gone and it was just like I think it was 8 of us in the room at the time or whatever, I was able to talk, and that's when I said something about the JCPA cartel bill and stuff like that going through. And apparently none of these people had heard about that yet, and I informed them of that shit, and it was like they were like, "Whoa!" And it's like, "Yeah, dude, exactly." So it's interesting too because again, that's the only good thing about having new acquaintances and other communities and stuff like that, is it allows you to then have the ability to go out there and inform others of, hey, have you guys heard about this thing? And they're just like, no, I've been not pay attention or whatever the case be. And it's like, yeah, this could be very, very bad if it gets through and stuff like that kind of deal. Like this is something we should all be fighting against right now, dude. And it's again, that JCPA bill is basically nothing more than the media, mainstream media specifically, trying to fuck over independent media is what it is, dude. And silence people is what it is, because the whole point of the bill itself is for the mainstream media to create this like joint corporation kind of thing, or whatever the case be, between each other. And anybody that wants to come on board of that, you would have to go and surrender all of your fucking financials and like pretty much lay everything on the table for like public domain at that point, to where they could essentially have like anybody that wanted to fuck you over is what it is. And that's why you're going to see a lot of independent media just fold because of that. Because there's like, yeah, there's like, I'm not releasing my financials, I'm not releasing my numbers, et cetera on that one, dude. Fuck you. And that's why I think honestly, this whole bill itself, if it does come to fruition where it would pass through the Senate and then the House and then to Biden's desk and stuff, you would seriously have lawsuits going against it immediately if it even got to that point, dude. Because I'm hoping and praying honestly that they can't get it through before the end of the year. And If there's people that are willing to actually fight for our rights in Congress and Senate and stuff like that, dude, I'm like that cuck bitch Ted Cruz that gave Amy Klobuchar a fucking win is what it was there, dude, to actually give it to a floor vote, because he could have killed. That's the thing, dude. Ted Cruz and other Republicans had the ability in the committee that was part of to just kill it in committee there, and he just gave this bitch a win to get it out of committee and take it to a floor vote then on the Senate floor. So it's just silly as fuck to me, honestly, dude. And again, it's why you shouldn't trust anybody in the government, because they don't care about you. They don't care about your rights. They don't care about your family, and they never will. Is what it is, dude. They're a bunch of scumbags. Most of them are career politicians that are just a bunch of assholes in general. But anyway, going back to what I was mentioning earlier about the one guy last night, though, and the whole like sovereign stuff and whatnot. And it was interesting because when we were in the back chat, then he had left already, and then it was just one of his buddies that was talking there with us. And I was asking that guy because he kept mentioning something about I forget what it was now that we were discussing. I wish I had done this last night actually, but I was so tired this morning I couldn't do it. Is what it was, dude. But yeah, his friend was saying something about like I forget what that phrase was that they kept using for it, but basically, and I'm like, yeah, if you could break this down for dummies and stuff, which I was just making a joke, obviously at that point, like it's not really like I'm stupid or anything like that, or anybody else's for that matter. It's just like what your friend was trying to explain. He was trying to explain in a way, instead of being layman's terms, he was just trying to do like the hot, like basically it was, I know different things in my vocabulary. Let me use every big word I've ever learned, kind of thing, is what it is, and make people feel stupid then. And I feel like that's the problem with so many of them people. It's like, you want to sit there and act like you're the smartest person in the room, when in reality, there's a lot of midwittery in our fucking country, dude. And, for those who don't know about what midwittery is, dude, it's essentially you have like dimwits and midwits, and then you have like actual smart people and stuff like that that are intellectuals and shit. And I feel like there's a lot of those people that fall into the midwit category that think they're intellectuals, but in reality, they're just uh, the smartest fool, I guess is the best way to describe them, actually. And, when you're sitting there and you're talking about, like, well, first of all, my whole thing is when you're an American citizen and you're knocking the Constitution and to a lesser extent the founding fathers and stuff like that, like, that's fighting words to me, man. Seriously. And it's a situation there where I'm not gonna put up with that kind of crap. Like I will just leave, or I'll just tell you to fuck yourself and then leave. Basically, is what it is. And I think honestly, like going to what I've said on this channel several times here and there, that's why you will never see all the sides in history come together against tyranny, because it's a lot of infighting. Whether it be left, right, center, etc. Not being able to get along, or being able to have like, pseudo conversations that maybe we'll get along in, and sometimes we will, sometimes we won't, and that's the one thing too people don't even realize about the founding of this country, dude. Like, do people really think that all the founding fathers, all the guys that signed the Declaration of Independence, actually liked each other? Fuck no, dude. They would fist fight each other on a regular basis and shit like that. At least, of course, at least according to the historical books that we have out there that talk about history and shit, which as we talked about before, history is written by the winners, so who knows how much truth there is in that and whatnot. But, there's at least some substance there to say, hey, this was a possibility that did happen. So, and for people to, again, the first individual I've been talking about this whole time, for him to knock that kind of shit and be like, oh, but that's not even the case, bro. And it's like, how the fuck do you know, dude? Do you have a time machine? Were you there? Like, seriously. And that's the problem I have with that kind of stuff, dude. It's like, unless you physically can show me your time machine and we can jump in the fucking time machine and go back to, fucking 1777 at that point or whatever it was, dude, or fucking 1792 or whatever it is. Actually, no, it'd be 1788 would be the year I'd want to go back to, because that would be the year before they actually ratified the Constitution, is what it would be. Because it was 1789 is when they actually ratified the Constitution. But yeah, until you can show me that shit, like, you're just making an opinion and an assumption at that point, dude, and you don't have any evidence to actually back it up, is what it is. So, whereas there are actual historical documents out there that show, like, hey, this is some of the stuff that our founders were into, is what it was, dude. So, but what's funny to me is these are also the same people that will sit there and do quotes from Ben Franklin or Thomas Jefferson or whatever it is, dude. So yeah, it's just funny because again, like I said, it's these kind of people that want to have their cake and eat it too is what it is. And but yeah, the whole thing was like it was interesting. It was an interesting conversation for the couple of hours that we had last night, and it would have been nicer if I had been able to speak more, but unfortunately, because of the way that that panel was, and even the one guy was saying about his friends and was like, yeah, man, like I don't know if you guys noticed, but these dudes talk a lot, and that was the one thing too. Like that was the one of the new guys that was in there last night for the first time. A lot of us felt very insulted by that dude because he was essentially, it wasn't like he was trying to talk over people, he was trying to talk under people, where it was like he was mumbling shit under his breath kind of thing, like while other people were talking, and it's like, bro, that's not cool, and that's how you don't get invited back to future panels, is what it is. And yeah, I think that's the problem with some of those folks. And then that particular individual was talking about not being into guns right now, or whatever the case. People like trying to get into 2A and stuff like that, and like saying some certain things, or whatever the case. Being he's like, yeah, I'm not a Fed, and I'm like, that sounds like something a fucking Fed would say. Like that's all I thought about in the back of my mind. Cause I wasn't gonna actually say that to everybody that was in the thing at the time, but yeah, that's what I was thinking at that time. I was like, yeah, it sounds like something a fucking Fed boy would say, bro. So, and then this was also the same guy that was doing all kinds of weird fucking um computer generation stuff to do like deep fake facial things and make himself look like other people is what it was. And it's like, yeah, it just feels very weird. And then there was like a whole story that we were talking about last night that was I forget exactly what the overall story was. It was something where it was supposed to either be like a movie or a documentary or something like that came out recently, where they were trying to create like an AI robot that was like a child or something. And like the whole storyline for it was like this robot child basically in a relationship with an adult and stuff like that. And it was basically them pushing pedophilia again. And that guy was like, oh yeah, but if this, stops an actual kid from being harmed and stuff like that. And it's like, what the fuck, bro? Like that, again, that sounds like you're going down like a fucking like pro pedo fucking side at that point, dude. And it's like, I don't know. Like it just felt very like sussy in general is what it is, dude. Like very, very suspicious. So, like I said, it like the whole thing just felt like it just it kind of gave me the willies. I guess is what the best way to describe it would be, dude. Of like, yeah, I don't want to be part of this thing with this person in the future, kind of deal. And it's based on just those like, and again, that could be my autism coming out and stuff like that, dude. Where it's just like, my thing is though, looking at my own history and stuff like that of my autistic behavior and stuff like that and everything else like that, it seems like being more in tune because of the autism and shit like that, I can start to catch things that other people can't, or like I'll hone in on certain things that other people won't. And, again, it might be just me thinking it's something worse than it actually is kind of deal or whatever. But then it seems like a lot of times my instincts on those kind of things are very like, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years later, whatever it is, or like spot on kind of shit is what it was, dude. And so, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I'm not going to accuse anybody of anything, but like, I don't know, man. Like this dude just seemed like very like suspicious. I guess I'd say is the best way to say it about him, dude. And like I said, I wasn't the only one. I'm not going to mention other people though who was also talking about how they thought it was pretty weird what this guy was doing and stuff like that and whatnot. So I don't know. Like I said, it's I think there's a few of us that caught on to what the hell's going on there is what it was, dude. And yeah. But again, I'm not gonna knock anybody for anything. It's just, I'm not trying to anyway. And it's just one of those things where it's like like I'll say it like this, right? It's fine and dandy to have new acquaintances and have, other points of view and other ponds and stuff like that, and you're like next to your pond. And have other people coming in there and doing what they want to do is what it is. But honestly, like you got to have a vetting process for certain things, dude, because again, if you don't, that's how you let, some fucking crazy motherfucker in there is what it is. And then that person ends up, it turns out that actually they were a fucking, Fed or federal informant or whatever the whole time, and they were just trying to fuck you over is what it was. So I don't know, man. And I'm not gonna sit here and say any of those dudes were, but like I don't know that middle guy that I was talking about there. That dude seemed suspicious enough to kind of be that route is what it would be. So yeah, it's interesting though. And like I said, it's one of those things that you look at in general and stuff, and you realize like, okay, if it wasn't for the internet, I would never know who these people were, kind of thing is what it is, dude. So it is kind of funny on that aspect of things because you're just like, yeah, if we didn't have internet, like I'd have no fucking clue who this person is, and that's a lot of times what it is actually. You know, you have people that you would never find otherwise is what it is, and in some cases that's a good thing, and in some cases it's also a bad thing because it's like if you had never met like X, Y, and Z, like you would never know that like this whole thing out there exists or whatever the case be, or it would be something where it's like, oh, but then if you had never met this person, you would have never been dragged down this road kind of thing. So it basically is like a give and take kind of deal is what it is. And I think unfortunately there is a lot of people that will exploit things if they can exploit things. And it does suck because it becomes a situation then of like, am I being used, or are they trying to, or somebody trying to use me, or whatever the case be? And it's a whole situation of do I want to go down that road versus do I just want to stay in my own lane, kind of thing is what it is. And I think on some cases it very much is a situation where you know I think some people want to just stay in our own lanes is what it is, dude. And like for me personally, I could kind of go either way because my thinking is it's like, you know, it would be nice to be able to find like more out there and be able to, talk to more people and stuff like that and make more friends and everything else like that, whether it be internet friends or whatever the case be. But then again, on the flip side of things, it's like, okay, do I really want like this person in my life kind of thing right now? And the thing is like, at the age of 37, which is what I am right now, 1985, born and raised, almost 38 now, going to be January and 30, I'll be 38. So it's like, do I really want at 37, almost 38, to have to deal with like, you know, a bunch more craziness and stuff like that? And the one thing that was mentioned last night in the main after chat is what it was, is that, this is when it was just me and a couple other people then, one of the people mentioned it's like, yeah, we just got rid of one of these motherfuckers recently that was kind of a crazy fool. And it's like, do we really want to replace them with somebody else now that could be a crazy fool? And I'm just like, no, I don't. And that was the whole point. And again, I'm not trying to sit here and say like, yeah, some of these people are just, crazy fools or whatever the case be. But like, my whole thinking is it's like when you're sitting there talking about like foolish behavior and, just like basically fool's errands of, oh yeah, I don't want to be part of this thing or whatever the case be. And it's like, okay, and how do you plan to fix that? Like, what's your, idea? What idea you bring to the table? And in a lot of cases, it's they don't have anything, is what it is. Or it's like, oh well, I met this group of people over here that has talked about this thing for, the last 10 years or whatever it is now. And it's like, okay, so why in the last 10 years has that not caught on or caught fire or whatever the case be? And a lot more people have subscribed to that ideology then. And again, it's mostly because of the fact that it's either, in some cases it could be suppression, it could be censorship and stuff like that by, big tech and stuff, which makes sense to some extent. But I think a lot of it is you'll have people that will see stuff, they'll look at the basis of something, and they'll just be like, they'll take it at face value or whatever the case be, and they'll be like, this is fucking stupid. I'm gonna go back over here now. Please don't follow me, is what it is. And I feel like I'm kind of in that secondary camp there in some cases where it's like, and like I said, dude, like my big thing is, I've always been pro Constitution, pro founding father, et cetera, et cetera. And, even as a child when I didn't even really understand like what the Constitution meant or anything like that. But now, like, right, the meat and bones of the thing, end of 2019, early 2020, when I met other people out there locally that were very much constitutionalists and, inspired me and, put me down a pathway to where I'm at right now of, this is why our Constitution matters so much kind of thing because of their, impassioned speeches and stuff like that. And my thinking is it's like, when you have that structure now, and then you have these other people coming in and trying to knock that structure out from under you is what it is, trying to knock your platform out from under you is what it is. And, make you hit the ground or whatever it's going to be then. Like, that's not okay, bro. And I think, unfortunately, there are far too many individuals out there who are trying to do just that, is what it is. And yeah, it's not cool, man. And my thing is, like I said, when you have, I think truthfully, the real thing is, going back to and like I understand like what the one guy was saying last night about like, the constitutional mindset and stuff like that. And how am I trying to phrase this now? I'm trying to think exactly how he said it now. It was basically how people are born, but we're not like signing our names to a fucking thing to actually be part of like something or whatever the case be. Or it's like, oh, this thing that like some other people wrote like several hundred years ago kind of deal or whatever the case be. But the thing is like, when you look at the Constitution, dude, even if there was no U.S. Constitution, it's still inalienable rights. It's still, rights you have by birth no matter what is what it is, dude. You have the right to self-defense. You have the right to freedom. You have the right to free speech, etc. And it's like, it doesn't matter if they were written down, 250 some odd years ago at this point, or pretty close to that, by a bunch of old dudes, which, it's funny that we say old dudes because, a lot of us look at, founding fathers as old men and stuff like that. But in reality, they weren't. They were people that were like in the very beginnings of the American Revolution. I was going to say Civil War, but I, caught myself there. But no, in the very beginnings of the American Revolution that founded this country, most of those guys, with the exception of George Washington, were in their like teens and early 20s, dude. And I think Washington was like mid to late 20s at the time. So by the time you had like the 1789 come around, he was like, I think 40s or maybe early 50s at most. And yeah, I want to say he was maybe like in his 40s or something then back in those days. But again, that was a time period where you had people who, you didn't live to see. Like there was times where you could get a scratch on your fucking finger and you were dead in a week from fucking infection, dude. So it's like, the average lifespan back in those days was only like, late 20s, early 30s. Maybe if you're lucky, you're making it to like 40 something ish. And that's the thing, dude. Like a lot of people don't realize that stuff. And so, when you go back to that time period of history and you start looking into that kind of stuff and you realize, like, oh, yeah, like these really were like young men. It was a bunch of young men going out there and fighting for their nation and fighting for their, ability to live free and what they needed to do to actually become something better is what it is. And I think that's unfortunately the problem with our society right now, dude. You have so many people who want to sit there and act like they're something better, and it's like they're not, And I'm just gonna say it like it is, dude. Like they're just not. They want to sit there and act as if they're fucking like, it's like, oh yeah, I'm so much better than this thing 100 something years ago, whatever it was. And in reality, it's like, nah, bro. Like you don't even know the fucking basis of anything, is what it is. And that's kind of where I feel like, truthfully, that's where a lot of our society uh will come back at, and that's where a lot of our faith will end up with as what it is, dude. And it's like, I think there's some people that will agree, like there are certain things out there that are better left unsaid, and there are some things that are better left, like let sleeping dogs lie kind of mentality and stuff like that. But the thing is, if you're not talking about these things, all you're doing then is you're putting yourself and everyone else in more of a situation to where you're never going to have those conversations. And that's why I like to have these kind of conversations, on this channel, is because of the fact that it's like, I'd like people to know like what my thought process is on stuff. Because if you understand where I'm coming from, maybe you understand like, why I have such the base that I have and why my faith in, the Constitution is what it is. and why I do, subscribe to religion in some cases is what it is, specifically Christianity and stuff like that, dude, is because of the fact that it's like, yeah, I was always there, like it was a thing for me. And now I'm not going to sit here and say like, there's not like serious sick shit going on in all these fucking things, like whether it be, cross religious boundaries and everything else like that. But the thing is, it's like, when you have people like acting like, oh, it's everywhere and stuff like that, it's like, oh, it's everywhere, everybody's doing it kind of thing is what it is. In reality, it's like, no, it's just like, a small group of individuals that happen to be doing some sick shit is what it is, dude. And to sit there and try to lump that on like an entire, religion or whatever it is, dude, is very, very harsh, honestly. And I think, unfortunately, when you again, the thing is, when you start talking to some of these individuals as well about these kind of things, like they'll sit there and actively tell you that it's like, okay, well, what is your, what is your base kind of thing? And they'll be like, oh yeah, I have no, base in religion. They're atheists or they're, agnostic, whatever it is, dude. And again, it's one of those situations there where it's like, okay, so you're claiming to be that thing then, or whatever the case be. Like, so how the hell do you know that, what you claim to be, whatever, is actually the real thing here? So yeah, to me, it's very much um, people trying to sort of kick a hornet's nest, I think, is what it is. And I think in some cases it is folks that are just trying to get, a rise out of others is what it ends up being then. And my thinking of it is, it's like, I'm not going to go down that road with people is what it is, dude. Like I've had like in the last year of my life right now, I've put up with too much bullshit and I've had to cut ties with a lot of individuals across the board. And I'm glad I did, honestly, because I realized after the fact now, like, I don't have time for that shit in my life. There's no reason for me to even put up with that kind of fucking, crap is what it is, dude. And the longer that I can sit here and do what I need to do and be able to speak my truth is what it is, the better off I think I'm going to be. And unfortunately, when people want to sit there and, again, not allow you to even speak or try to speak over you or whatever the case be, it just leads to, like, what you call it and shit, dude. And again, it's, one of those things I mentioned earlier with the founding fathers and stuff like that, dude. It's like, that's why when these guys were together, that would be like, nah, bro, like, you shut the fuck up, you shut the fuck up. And it was like, fisticuffs at fucking uh noon or something like that kind of deal is what it was, dude. And I feel like in general, like, that's pretty much where we're heading again, honestly. And I mentioned it before, I think truthfully in a lot of cases, if we had like mutual combat across the board right now, and we had people that were able to uh it's sort of like a new version of redress of grievances, where it's like a redress of grievances, trial by combat kind of thing versus politicians and stuff like that. Like, you would have a lot of our issues in this country solve themselves very quickly when you had like American citizens just fighting politicians then. So anyway, I don't know, I could be totally wrong on that one, but my thing is, it's like, it's one of those situations where you feel like you're basically, treading water. And then, like I said, you got these people that want to sit there and try to claim, like, oh, but this thing is so much better and this is why kind of mentality. And it's like, is it though? Because it sounds like it's a bunch of hoopla bullshit to me, man. So I don't know, you know, just my 2 cents on the matter is what it is. And I feel like, truthfully, it's one of those situations where, again, like, I don't really want to subscribe to whatever the fuck like they're selling is what it is, dude. And again, there's been talk about that forever, dude. The false prophet thing, and then the fucking um what else am I saying now? Yeah, the false prophet thing, and then also the whole deal with people and not knowing like how to spot a snake oil salesman kind of thing is what it is, dude. And I feel like in general, like, that's kind of what I'm seeing with some of these folks that, have come in more recently to these panels and stuff, is like, that's what I almost feel like they're trying to sell right now. It's like, you're trying to sell me on the idea that, like, oh, your thing is so much better because X, Y, and Z. But the way that you're, trying to sell it, it just sounds like a big old pile of steaming shit, honestly. And I'm just gonna say it like it is, dude. And that's why I wouldn't subscribe to that kind of crap, is what it is, dude. So yeah. But that's pretty much, where I stand on a lot of this stuff, dude, is it's like, you know, it's one thing if you want to mention something or discuss something or whatever it is, where you're going to talk about, certain topics or whatever it is, and you're on your own platform, and that be the case, like you're the host of something or whatever the case be, so it's your channel that would be at risk to get, hit with like terms of service strikes or whatever it is. But when you're on other people's panels and you're like sitting there, sort of talking under your breath or whatever it is, and basically talking shit about certain things or whatever the case be, and it's like, are you trying to get these people channel strikes? Like, what the fuck, bro? Like, fuck you, like, fuck off, basically is what it is. So yeah, and I feel like that's what the one guy was trying to do last night to some extent. He was just being a douche, basically, is what it is. And yeah, it's one of those situations where it's like, do you really want those kind of people in your lives, is what it is. And I personally don't, is what it is, man. Seriously. Like, to me, there's no reason to have that kind of an individual in my life when, I don't know who the fuck they are, really. They're just some dude on the internet, is what it is, man. And it's like, I've met a lot of other dudes on the internet that I thought were cool fucking people, and I hung out with them for long enough, and then, all it took was me having one stream on my own fucking channel here, like a 5-minute rant about some stuff where I wouldn't date leftist chicks and stuff, and then, discussing actual historical facts of this country for so many of these people to show their true colors and turn their backs on me, is what it was, dude. So, yeah, to me, it's not worth it, man. It's not worth it to put yourself out there wholly and, open yourself up to potentially be preyed upon by the worst possibility of society, is what it is, man. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that, like, those individuals I've been talking about this whole time, this whole episode, are that way and stuff. They could easily be, some of the best people out there, honestly. And I think the one guy is a legit good dude, is what it is. It's just you have others that were, part of that as well, that just came off very, like I said, very condescending, is what it is. And it's one of those situations where it's like, yeah, I'm not okay with that kind of shit. But I am going to go ahead and, if anybody out there wants to, I'm going to finish up here in a minute. So if anybody wants to come and do back chat stuff, I'm going to go ahead and drop the StreamYard link in the discussion right now, which it should pop up there. So if y'all want to come in the back chat for a few minutes and shoot the shit or whatever the case be and discuss this further and stuff, feel free to grab that link. If not, I'll probably be here for like 10 to 15 minutes or so, and then I'll head out because I got some other stuff I got to do real quick. Mom's supposed to be coming home today from her trip that she was on for the last few days now, and I'm trying to clean some stuff up around the house right now, so it looks a little better when she comes home then. So, and hopefully we'll actually be able to do some stuff then after that. I'll tell you what, there was a frost advisory this morning, and I had to grab a big ass fucking blanket this morning because it was so fucking cold when I was trying to sleep. Like, I was just shivering like a motherfucker. So, and it wasn't until I had that blanket on me for like at least an hour or so that I finally started getting warm again. And what I've been saying recently about, the possibility of like a grid down situation where it would be like middle of winter and shit, dude, and people not surviving. Like, yeah, just thinking about that this morning and like how cold it was without like, heat on in the house and shit. Like, not fun, man. Not fun at all. So, but yeah, like I said, if anybody wants to use that link, feel free. I'll be here for a few minutes, and if nothing else, then we'll just chat or whenever then, if that be the case then. So, but other than that, that's pretty much where I'm at for the day. Yeah, like I said, it's interesting to meet new people and see their point of view of things. It's also interesting when they bring a point of view that, isn't really all that worth listening to, kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? And again, like it's interesting when you look at the people that subscribe to some of this stuff and you realize like, oh, okay, so this person might just be nuts, kind of thing. And I'm not trying to knock anybody. I'm just, making jokes, obviously, at this point. But nah, seriously though, like some of the shit that some of these people come up with is just like so fucking off the wall, and it's like, how the hell did you even like think that up, or how the hell did somebody else even think that up, man? Like, that just sounds insane. And yeah, then you realize, like, oh, it's just somebody who might actually be insane. So yeah, it is what it is, man. Like I said, it doesn't like, and I feel like, truthfully, as long as I'm, distance myself from those kind of things, or whatever the case be, it's not going to affect me as much as it could. Whereas, sometimes it does, and unfortunately, it becomes a whole thing. Then I'm gonna go ahead and make sure that StreamYard link is out there for anybody who wants to jump in this panel. Then, for the back chat, then, because I'm not sure if it popped up on the YouTube side or not. I'm gonna go ahead and go to YouTube real quick here and drop it in the actual thing. Then, if anybody that's watching right now wants to come in the back and shoot the shit for a few minutes, or whatever the case be. So, and then we'll head out after that. Then, but yeah, it's definitely one of those situations where, you don't realize what you got until it's gone. And then in some ways, some people just want to sit there and act like, again, they're the smartest individual in the room, or whatever it's going to be, when in reality, they're actually not that smart at all, is what it is. So, but yeah, hang on a second. I'm going to go ahead and drop this link. Okay, I dropped the StreamYard link again. I just realized when I went over there, it was already dropped from my side and the other side, so it did work the right way the first time. So, all right, if anybody wants to use that, like I said, we'll do a back chat here for a little while, and then I'm gonna go do a few things after that, next hour or two. So, but yeah, other than that, though, that's pretty much where we're at for the day. It's interesting to see, like I said, when you have differing opinions and, different values being brought to the table and stuff like that, like who is all about certain things and who out there will basically subscribe to certain things, or whatever the case be, whereas other individuals will understand and realize, like, no, that's not how it is at all, dude. Like, you're just talking silly kind of shit here. And then you end up having another situation where people will realize and wake up and, show their true colors in a lot of cases very quickly, is what it is. And when they do, that's the time to basically do what needs to be done to save yourself. And, fuck all them, is what it is, man. So anyway, that's pretty much where we're at for the day, though. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I will see you all in the next one.